Bob, one of the things you and I often struggle with is alignment. If you've ever listened to our episodes, you know Bob and I are always arguing. He's always wrong. I'm always right. And I'm always trying to educate the guy on why he's wrong. In reality, that's not true. We often try and create a little bit of conflict, and it rarely ends up that we actually disagree, which is good. We align naturally. But unfortunately, many of our listeners live in a world where there's not alignment. And so we want
Right.
to address that for those that feel misaligned, or maybe those of you that are listening and saying, we're perfectly aligned. I got news for you. You're probably not.
You beat me to the punch, Josh. I was like, I have some bad news for you.
Yeah.
That you're actually when you think you're aligned, you're probably as far away from it as you possibly can be.
Yeah. That is a sad reality. And one of the things that Bob mentioned as we were prepping for this topic is that it so often goes unknown or unnoticed, untreated, and it just makes things painful and it- things don't work out. A lot of things don't work out. So we are here today to help you, number one, recognize that problem, and number two, solve that. So, Bob, where would you like to start?
So leaders are saying I'm measuring outcomes, or they're pontificating, they're sharing the agile talk, outcomes and value driven, etc. And then so the teams are focused on outcomes, but then what the leaders are actually measuring is output, like lines of code, story points, or whatever. And so that's an example, Metacasters, probably from a delivery expectation point of view, of a lack of alignment, um, as being a problem. And Josh was in his email, he's talking about how disruptive that can be. I mean, it's disruptive to the system, but it's disruptive to, I think it's particularly, I get concerned about the disruption it has to the team.
It's a shock to the system because there's so much driving for the teams towards we need to be thinking about outcomes versus outputs and what's the business value. And that's a hard transition for people to make. And so there's a lot of effort and energy, and they work the sprint review, which we just talked about in our previous episode about value, value, value. And so teams pour everything they have into getting ready and to do all the
Yep.
demonstration and really align all of their work well. And then they're measured on story points. And
Yeah.
so the teams all of a sudden get that look like a dog that's confused, and they cock their head to the side and like, what's going on? I thought you wanted this, but now you're telling me this is the thing
Right.
that matters. And so that just creates confusion, and teams, rightfully so, feel helpless because they don't know which way to go. Of, hey, you're saying you want this, but then your actions say this. So what do I do?
So how do we fix that? Why don't we brainstorm? And that's an example of a lack of alignment. There's more that maybe we can come up with in
Yeah.
this episode, but that's an example. But I'd like to get us back to like what do we do? What are some so I think detection of it, like we were saying, it's not always easy to detect. But let's say you have detected it's a lack of alignment. What are some ways to mitigate that?
Well, this is where an agile leader has to step in, whether it's a scrum master or an agile coach or a consultant like Bob or myself, or that group leader, say it's the engineering manager or whoever's doing the measuring. This is when you have to really understand and look at what you're measuring and the word you're saying versus what you're doing. And a lot of times there's a lot of challenges where you as that leader are fighting uphill against an organization that wants metrics and specific numbers for reviews or quarterly reports or board meetings or things like that. So the first thing you might have to do is start working upstream. It's not just changes you have to drive within yourself, it's likely changes you have to drive within the organization because they've been working in the old way, and now you have to start to transform the entire organization of, hey, I understand historically we've measured success like this, but that doesn't really measure success. It measures that we're doing things, that wheels are spinning, but it doesn't mean we're actually delivering value to our customers that's continuing to convince them to give us their hard-earned money for the products that we're building. That's the thing that we're trying to measure, and that is admittedly more difficult. And that's why so many places default back to, oh well, let's find the thing that's easy to measure. let's find a thing that we can put in a spreadsheet. And you're going to have to fight against that both in internally with yourself, but also within your organization to try and transform HR or your boss or the board or whoever to begin thinking differently. So that's step one.
I'd like to add to that. I think, and I did this many many years ago, but I think it's still a relative pattern or a posture. Uh, I was an agile leader in a waterfall organization, a waterfall, culture, and so what I had to do is serve as a translation unit. So I thought of my job as being like an API to some degree. I had to, on the team side, I had to speak agility, and then I had to convert things like velocity or whatever into project plans to communicate. So I wasn't trying to change because it takes, I was trying to change the culture, but it takes so long to change the culture. Like, what do you do? So I think as a leader, you also, so yes, and to what Josh was saying, uh, and often you have to be working at changing the system. But until you do, I think you have to serve in a translation role in some way, and it's actually hard to get the terminology right and to get the behaviors right. And it's sort of that API. That's extra work that you have to do at the end of the day. So that would be my yes and. Josh, any reactions to that?
I agree. And I think most people live in a world where they are trying to operate in an agile manner, yet the rest of the organization still operates in a waterfall, annual budgets, and it will take years. And I know this because I've been through these slugfests of trying to transform the entire organization of think in an agile manner and less large, long term planning and things like that. And that's where I think so many people get beaten down,
Yeah.
where they just kind of roll up the white flag, like, okay, fine, we'll just go back to story points or whatever. And I understand how people get there. I don't support that decision that's made, but I understand it is challenging and it's difficult. And often you are the lone ranger out there trying to drive this change. And it's not easy, as Bob talked about. You're having to work in a couple of different directions. But if you really want to achieve that success where everything is as smooth and high performant as you've dreamed of, it takes that time and energy to just continually be the translation layer. That's a significant job and continue to drive change across the organization. So there's a ton of work to get it to where everybody's speaking the same language. However, I can tell you that that juice is definitely worth the squeeze. It takes a lot of squeeze to get a little bit of juice out, but over time, that is an amazing place to be. Having made that happen a handful of times, the rate with which your team can deliver value because you're not working in this herky jerky movement where you're trying to feed both sides, that's an amazing place to be, but it takes a ton of work.
I think another thing in this scenario, but in a lot of alignment scenarios, is making. I'm going to sound like a systemic coach now. Is revealing the system to itself. So instead of coming in on a charger and declaring you are misaligned, please align yourselves, and then charging off, as some consultants might do, I'd say systemic coaching is reveal the misalignment to the members. So in this case, get the team and the leader together, and this is where a good coach or a good facilitator, a good scrum master who can facilitate discussions like this, you just get people to jot down their assumptions, right? Like put a question up. How are we measuring success? And have everyone privately jot it down on a sticky note, etc. And the leader is going to say, yes, it's outputs, but at the end of the or it's outcomes, but at the end of the day, lines of code matter or whatever they're going to articulate, and the teams are going to articulate their view. And what you do is you look and it visually sort of shows you reveal that system, the disconnect, to the participants. Now it's their choice. Is that a problem? And you could facilitate some discussions, and then you could facilitate a discussion of what should we be measuring. You know what? the team can handle being measured by output. I mean, I don't agree with it, but the big problem is they don't know, right? There's dissonance. So what we mean by alignment is we may not like it but agree, or
Hmm.
the leader may not like what you end up with, right? Oh, I have to align with the team's expectations and Agile's expectations. Okay, but align until you decide to align in another way. So a good coach, good facilitation can help and sort of get it out there, uh, and get everyone's opinion quietly. This is a place where I want everyone to jot down their understanding. Then we look at it, and then we start trying to, like, it's almost like a merge. Then you're trying to merge to what are we going to agree to? Josh, any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I, I think the point that you made is fantastic because too many people go in, too many people go in and attempt to change the world in one fell swoop. And you're not going to be able to change your organization in one fell swoop. It's going to take years. I talked about having to go through the slugfest year in and year out. And I was just coaching a leader that said to me, Josh, I don't know how I'm ever going to get this company to think in agile manner. What would you do? And their annual planning session is in the summer. And I said, this is the time when you pounce on this because everybody else is in this panic about how they build this annual budget, this annual plan for the next 18 months because it takes time to make that happen. So they're all, the gnashing of teeth and wringing of hands are going on because they have to get this plan locked in. And so they feel that pain. They understand the impossibility of building out that waterfall plan for the next year where it's locked in and a decision you made 15 months ago without information you have now has you locked into a decision that you have to deal with at the end of the year. So now this is when you start being an agile leader, being an agile coach, and talking to them about, man, I understand this sucks. What do you think about trying things like this? And every year, just getting them to turn that crank a little bit, where because they feel that pain in that moment, they are more willing to accept and try something different because they know they're in this mission that is impossible. So then you sit down with them and say, okay, let's talk about the challenge that you're having right now. What if we tried this? What if you did this? What if this was a thing that we did? And you don't have to get
Yep.
them to go from A to Z in one step, but just get them to try a couple things. And then that year will go a little bit better. And then 12 months later, the same problem is going to come up and you sit down with them again and coach them through. And then it's like, oh, yeah, that's right. We tried that thing that was so much better. What else can we do? And then you layer that. And soon enough, everybody's running towards the answer, which has been the answer for years, but you have to lead them through those evolutionary changes until you get to the point where, hey, we're maintaining an annual budget, but we're gonna update it every month as we learn and as we adjust and everything that goes into that. So that, but again, that takes years of planting seeds and sowing your fields and everything that goes into that. That's the kind of work that you have to put in. I talked about it's a long slog and it's going to take all this time. Well, those are the things that you have to do is understand the pain points, help your peers when they feel that pain, help them understand what they can do to solve that, and then little by little their eyes will start to open and their ears will start to open and they say, "Oh, you know what? Let's try that."
I mean, I want to go back and actually amplify something we said. And I was joking about it, and maybe I didn't. I don't want to de-emphasize it. But Metacasters, I want you to assume. I think this is the better strategy: is assume you're misaligned in many areas. Any area where you're having tension. So any area where people are frustrated, or there's tension, or people, they argue about terminology or something, uh, that's inevitably an alignment problem. And I think tension is an indicator of that. Conversational tension, work tension. uh, so so there's a lot of that in the world. So don't think this is a rare thing, or don't think this is just Bob and Josh spewing alignment or anything. Oh, it's just their context. I've seen this hundreds, thousands of times. The other thing is it goes unaddressed, either undetected Or usually then people are like, oh, they just, it's not my problem, it's a team problem or something. So they discount it. And it has ongoing, it's going to erode your morale, it's going to erode your results. Whether you're a leader looking at the team or the team looking at the leader, it's not good for either person. It's not good for the organization. So try to address it. So that's the thing. When in doubt, assume you're out of alignment, and there's no harm in getting, if you're aligned, then just getting realigned. It'll go smoothly. The other thing I was going to say is there's some nice canvases I use for alignment. There's one called an organizational culture canvas by Gustavo Rossetti. There's some team canvases that can be used for team agreements in the beginning of forming an agile team. If you just search for team canvas, very often those things, I use them to identify the misalignment. So I ask individuals to fill them out in areas, and you're using this canvas for the brainstorming and the discovery and the visualization. So depending on your misalignment, there's some canvases out there that you can be useful. You can ping Josh and I for if you have a particular situation, or you can just do some searching. But that's a nice non-adversarial way of attacking the problem. So you're not pointing the finger at the leader. It's not a good strategy to point the finger at Josh and say, you suck, or that's the wrong. Why are you measuring that way? That's stupid, or it's not agile. That's not helpful. So part of this transparency or this facilitation is you're not blaming anyone. You're just looking at it, and if it doesn't make sense, then it's adjusted.
Yeah. The reason why I believe this goes unnoticed or mistreated is at some point there was alignment. And then there was an assumption that the alignment continues. And the reality is, maintaining alignment across an organization of people, the larger the organization, the harder it is to maintain that. It's a full-time job to maintain that. The number of times as I was getting my leadership chops where I thought we had an agreement on, hey, this is how we're doing things across our team, and we did. We sat in this meeting, everybody was excited, and we were off and running, and then 6 weeks later it was like we never even had the discussion. What I realized was that was a failure on my part to maintain the alignment and the understanding and the importance of continually driving those points home, because you're asking people to do a lot of difficult and challenging things and to stay aligned on a lot of different things. There's just think of everything that you're doing with your team and all of the processes and patterns and things that go along the way, and there's little tweaks as you try and improve things. And are we tweaking this or are we not? What's the right way? And it's challenging. So leaders, this is where you go from good to great. Is you go to great when you work your tail off to maintain the alignment and context that everybody has across your organization. That is a full-time job. So put your suspenders on, like Bob, tighten them up, get ready to go, because you are going to need it. Because let me tell you, when I looked around and realized, holy cow, so this is what I should be doing all the time, man, I'm just like, this is going to wear the heck out of me. And it did. But once you get in that groove, things get better. But the biggest thing for me and why it was difficult was it was me building a new pattern in how I operate and establishing a new norm.
I'm sitting here thinking, Josh, and I'm thinking about like what are some characteristics or types of misalignment. So in this case, we're talking about goal misalignment, and I buy that, and maybe measurement misalignment, right? And they're tightly coupled. Uh, I would add to that. So categories of alignment to help the metacasters. I think vision clarity, vision misalignment is another one. Uh, Priority misalignment, value streams, investment. Um, People, you have you go into a leadership room, and is everyone on board with this? And all the leaders, yeah, I'm on board. And then they go out of the door, virtual door or physical door, and you hear people whining, oh man, that's not the right decision. I'm going to do this. Well, they appeared to be aligned, or they faked it, and they're not aligned. And that's a real problem. So maybe strategy alignment would be another area. Josh, I'm just looking
Yeah,
to share categories.
I think the strategic alignment is more common than people think. And I think it's more common because people are still going to do good things, even though they're misaligned on the strategy. They're still going to deliver value. But is it the most impactful value that could be delivered for the customers we're trying to go after, the strategic direction we're trying to go as a
Yeah.
company to enter this segment of the market, to attract these types of investors? There's all of these things where there's and they often happen in like large big meetings, and then it's like, okay, everybody break and go, and then everybody gets smacked with these other little problems that prevent them from getting to the strategic direction, and then soon enough they keep getting smacked around with these smaller problems, and they lose focus of the strategic direction that they're trying to go, not because they're bad employees or they don't care, but because they're fighting all these other things. So that's why leaders have to continuously deliver, this is the strategic direction that we're going through, this is what we're trying to achieve, continually defining that mission or vision. Unfortunately, there are too many places where that mission and vision, not a vision, maybe it's half fish has half vision, but anyways, it doesn't exist, or it exists on some like wiki page, and it's like 7 miles long, and it's impossible to put in your brain all at once. And it was like, well, it's on a Confluence page, and so everybody should just know it. No, everybody's not going to just know it. You as a leader have to boil it down, have to distill it into something that is consumable, that can live in the front of people's brains every moment of every day. And if it's a little bit challenging, then you have to help make that happen. That's on you as a leader to help make sure that that strategic clarity exists. And unfortunately, strategies don't exist a lot of places. And if they do, they don't live in the front of people's brains. All right, we're going to take a quicker break from our alignment episode to talk about ensuring that all of your product plans are aligned. I'm here to help make that happen. I've got a new course that's launching in mid July where we're going to take you through step by step how to build your agile plans and have them be fully aligned across your organization so that everybody has clarity on what's happening and when it's happening, and you have total command of the plan. And what does that command of the plan mean? That means the entire organization is aligned with where you're going and what you're doing. And it's a lot of work, but it's a magical place, and we are going to help make that happen over this 3-week live course with me. Link in the description. Back to the episode.
Role clarity is something. So role alignment is something that I found at different companies. I called it role confusion. Other people, many people call it role confusion, and it goes back to underscoring Josh's point of when you can get aligned, but then it erodes, it degrades over time. My interval for role erosion and having to realign roles was about 3 to 6 months at a company, and I could tell it was getting to be a problem when scrum masters and product owners would be coming to me and complaining and saying, we're getting a lot of tension, and I could feel it. And part of that is it's not people just ignoring you. Like, we were having folks move from team to team. Some people moved from roles, like BA roles, to product owner roles. Some developers moved to scrum master, etc. We were growing, so we were adding people from the outside who had a different perspective on the role, and we were throwing them together and saying, be scrum. And so there was confusion, there was a misalignment, and I would conduct an all hands meeting to realign people, and I would dust that off periodically. So that's your job. There's a repetition part. Josh alluded to it earlier. uh, and I just want to make it clear, it's not going to go. It's one of those things that very often as leaders we're like, I want to get it done and I want to move on to the next thing. Alignment issues are something that you have to sort of continuously be vigilant about.
Uh, It is it is a very tough lesson that I learned, where I had to transform how I operated in order to achieve the continual alignment that I desired for my team, for them to be able to run fast. Because you know what? When you're not aligned, think about your car. You have to get your wheels aligned and balanced and all of those things. And if you don't, your car starts to wobble and you can't go as fast. Your tires wear out faster and just bad things happen. The same thing happens with your organization. The the more the alignment is on, the faster your team can run in the same direction because everybody is running in the same direction. But as things start to fray, then different threads, different teams are pulling in different directions with good intent. They're not trying to take you off track. They're doing what they believe to be is clearly the best, but you have to continually work to provide them that vision of, hey, this is where we're going. This is who we're going to be. This is how we're going to get there. This is the mission. This is why you're the ones to make this happen. It is never ending. So just assume you have an alignment issue within your organization. And I think Bob made a great point of go look around, sniff out that tension. And that tension is most likely driven by alignment issues. And then work to understand and solve that problem.
I want to be clear too. We're talking a lot because our initial scenario was a leader to a team. Uh, that's actually not the biggest alignment issue I worry about. I worry about leader to leader alignment because when
Yes.
you have misalignment leader to leader, they're actually influencing their teams, right? They're communicating whatever that vision, mission, whatever those details are to their teams, and another leader is misaligned and communicating something subtly or seriously different. And so then you could create sort of multiple tension points. The problem is not the teams, then. The problem is those leaders are misaligned. So I would say peer to peer alignment is incredibly important, right? So if I'm looking at a Scrum team, then peer to peer. If I'm looking at a leadership team of an organization, then it's peer to peer. The reason I'm harping on it, almost every leadership team I encounter, and they're not bad, they're brilliant. Most of them are like rock solid. But when I get engaged, I see an alignment issue. It just seems to be human nature. It seems to be the norm, and it's an area that I focus on. And it's not major alignment. No one's over here. I'm going to undermine the company, and someone else. I'm going to succeed. It's not. It's more subtle than that. But it really is affecting the execution dynamics, and it really is affecting the team. So look at that peer to peer group, and look there. But the same techniques and tactics that we're talking about to resolve it would work there as well.
And it's amazing how quickly an outsider can come in and recognize that. So it is very challenging when you're in the moment and you think you're aligned, you believe you are, and you're running as fast. Everybody's running as fast as they can to do all the things. And again, with good intentions, everybody's trying to do the right things to achieve the missions and achieve the goals, but they're aligned slightly, and then slightly becomes greater and larger and farther, and you're so busy doing the things that you don't even notice you're drifting apart. And so that's why the value of having someone like Bob or myself that is able to come in and isn't that close to all of the problems, that can look and just quickly say, like, wait a minute, why are you going that way and why are you going that way? It
Right.
is an amazing and astounding thing to have someone fill that role, having done that myself on both sides of the table, having someone come in and point things out and you're like, no, really? And then you sit down with your peers and that coach or consultant and you're like, daggone, how are we this far off track? And then you quickly align. But the value of having a third party come in and just take an overview look that again isn't as close
Right.
to it, that it's amazing how quickly those things are seen.
So I think, Josh, how do you feel? I think we've explored the topic. It was yours. I want to make sure you're happy with it for this episode. Are you happy? Did we miss something
I do.
important?
I the key takeaway is you are misaligned somehow, some way. So go back to your team, go back with your peers, go back to your organization and just hit the pause button and look around and see what's not lining up, where that tension is, as Bob pointed out, and then work to realign. And it's the sooner you catch it, the easier it is to fix.
Absolutely. I want to share a metaphor with everyone that aligns with the mic drop that Josh just gave. I want you to think about a rubber ducky. Now I want you to think about multiple rubber duckies, maybe 10, 20 of them. And and alignment, the duckies are not in a row. So our job as agile leaders is to get all your ducks in a row. So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina,
In beautiful downtown Fuquay Varina, North Carolina.
I'm Bob Galen.
And I'm Josh Anderson.
Shake
And bake.
Take care, y'all.
I wondered where you were going with that. I had all these visions in my head about what's he doing with these rubber ducks. And then,
Did I bring it back? Did I land it? I brought it home, baby. Yeah. We got you. You got to get your ducks lined up. Get your ducks in a row.